The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday morning, disrupting the careful silence Marcus had cultivated over the past 3 weeks. He watched from his kitchen window, coffee growing cold in his hand, as a tall man with silver-streaked hair directed the movers with efficient gestures. The new neighbor, Marcus, didn't care. He didn't care about much anymore. His phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah. "We need to talk. Please." He deleted it without reading past the preview. 23 days since she'd moved out. 23 days since their 12-year marriage had shattered like dropped glass. She claimed it was temporary, that she needed space, that therapy could fix them. But Marcus knew better. He'd seen the distance in her eyes for months, felt the cold space growing between them in their bed. The doorbell rang that evening, pulling him from the stupor of his 4th beer. Marcus considered ignoring it, but something, maybe old habits of politeness, maybe simple curiosity, made him answer. The new neighbor stood on his porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Up close, the man looked to be in his mid-40s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to see too much. "I'm Adrian," the man said. "Just moved in next door. Thought I'd introduce myself." Marcus accepted the wine with a mumbled thanks, hoping the exchange would end there. Didn't. "Listen," Adrian said, his voice dropping lower. "I don't normally do this, but I saw something last week, and I think you should know." Everything in Marcus went still. "What are you talking about?" Adrian pulled out his phone, hesitated, then turned the screen toward Marcus. The photos loaded slowly, each one a knife to the chest. Sarah, walking into the Riverside Hotel. Sarah, laughing with a man Marcus didn't recognize. Sarah, the man's hand on the small of her back as they entered a room. The timestamps showed various dates over the past 2 months, all during her yoga classes or work dinners. Marcus's hand shook as he gripped the doorframe. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because no one showed me," Adrian said quietly, "and I wish they had, before I wasted 3 more years on someone who was already gone." The words hung between them like smoke. Marcus wanted to slam the door, wanted to unsee what he'd just witnessed, wanted to rewind to this morning when he could still pretend Sarah's distance was about stress or his long work hours or anything fixable. "I'm sorry," Adrian added. "Truly. But you deserved to know the truth." After Adrian left, Marcus sat in his darkening living room, the phone clutched in his hand. Sarah had texted again. "I miss you. I want to come home." He looked at the message for a long time. Then he opened his laptop and searched for divorce attorneys. The night stretched endlessly. Marcus replayed 12 years of memories, searching for the moment things had broken. Their wedding day, her laughter echoing through the church. The miscarriage that had nearly destroyed them both 3 years ago. The way she'd stopped reaching for his hand during movies. The separate bedrooms explained away as his snoring problem. How long had she been lying? How many of those yoga classes were actually afternoons in hotel rooms? How many times had he kissed her hello, tasting another man's lies on her lips? His phone lit up again. "Adrian, I know this is hard. If you need to talk, I'm here. No judgment." Marcus stared at the message. A stranger had shown him more honesty in 5 minutes than his wife had in months. The irony wasn't lost on him. He typed back, "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Adrian responded. "Just know you're not alone." But Marcus was alone. Completely, devastatingly alone. And somewhere across town, in the apartment she'd rented temporarily, Sarah slept soundly, her secrets finally exposed but her conscience apparently clear. Marcus poured another drink and watched the darkness outside his window, wondering how he'd become a man who needed a stranger's pity. The divorce papers arrived within the week. Marcus had moved fast. Too fast, maybe, but momentum was the only thing keeping him upright. Sarah's response came in the form of 37 missed calls and a tearful appearance at his door on Saturday morning. He didn't let her in. "Marcus, please." Her voice was raw, desperate. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," he said through the barely open door. "I saw the photos." Her face went white. "What photos? Who?" "Marcus, I can explain." "Don't." The word came out harder than he intended. Just don't. Sign the papers. We're done. She tried for another 20 minutes, cycling through denial, anger, bargaining. Marcus listened with a strange detachment, like watching a play he'd already seen. When she finally left, he found Adrian standing in his driveway, pretending to check his mailbox. "You okay?" Adrian asked. Marcus surprised himself by laughing. A bitter, hollow sound. "Define okay." "Fair enough." Adrian gestured toward his house. "I'm grilling steaks tonight. You're welcome to join me." Beats eating alone. Marcus should have declined, should have maintained boundaries with this man who'd upended his life. But the thought of another night alone with his thoughts felt unbearable. "Sure," he found himself saying. "Why not?" Adrian's house was still mostly unpacked, boxes stacked in corners, but the back patio was immaculate. String lights cast a warm glow over comfortable furniture. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers. It felt deliberately designed for comfort, for confession. They ate and talked about safe things: sports, work, the city. Adrian was a consultant, recently relocated from Seattle, divorced for 5 years. No kids. As the evening wore on and the wine flowed, the conversation deepened. "Want to know the worst part?" Marcus heard himself say. "I'm not even surprised. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to see it." "That's not weakness," Adrian said. "That's love. Or what we think love is supposed to be." "What is it supposed to be?" Adrian refilled their glasses. "Honest at minimum. Everything else is negotiable, but not honesty." They fell into silence. Marcus felt something shifting in his chest. Grief, maybe, or the first stirrings of anger. Real anger, not the numb shock he'd been carrying. "She's beautiful, your wife," Adrian said quietly. "I saw her that day she came by. Soon-to-be ex-wife. Right?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, his face half-shadowed. "You know what's strange? I've been thinking about you a lot this week. Wondering if I did the right thing showing you those photos." "You did." "Did I?" Adrian's eyes caught the light. "Or did I just transfer my own pain onto you? Maybe you would have been happier not knowing." "Ignorance isn't happiness." "Isn't it, though?" Adrian stood, moved to the railing overlooking his yard. "Sometimes I think about my ex-wife. Wonder what would have happened if I'd never found out. If she'd eventually come back to me on her own. If we'd have worked it out." Marcus joined him at the railing. "Would you really want that? Building a life on lies?" "I don't know anymore." Adrian turned to face him, and something in his expression made Marcus's breath catch. "I know I'm tired of being alone. Tired of wondering if I'll ever trust anyone again. Tired of—" He trailed off, his gaze holding Marcus's for a beat too long. The air between them felt suddenly charged. Marcus stepped back slightly, his heart racing for reasons he didn't want to examine. "I should go," he said. "Marcus." Adrian's voice was soft. "I want you to know, if you ever need anything, comfort, distraction, revenge." He smiled slightly at the last word. "I'm right here." The word hung between them like a dare. Revenge. Marcus understood what wasn't being said, the offer hidden in plain sight. He thought about Sarah, about the man in those photos, about the faithful husband he'd been for 12 years while she'd been fucking someone else. "I appreciate the dinner," Marcus managed, "but I should get home." He left quickly, his mind spinning. Back in his own house, he poured a whiskey with shaking hands. What had just happened? Had Adrian been offering what Marcus thought he was offering? And more troubling, why had part of him been tempted? He wasn't gay. He'd never looked at a man that way. But tonight, for just a moment, he'd felt seen in a way Sarah hadn't seen him in years. Adrian understood his pain because he'd lived it. There was intimacy in that shared wound. His phone buzzed. "Adrian, thank you for coming tonight. You're stronger than you think." Marcus stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thanks for the company." He didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, thinking about revenge and loneliness and the stranger next door who seemed to offer both. The following weeks passed in a haze of legal paperwork and forced normalcy. Marcus went to work, came home, avoided Sarah's increasingly frantic attempts at contact. She'd hired her own attorney, was contesting the divorce, claiming they should try counseling first. Her lawyer sent letters about marital assets and reconciliation attempts. Marcus ignored them all. Adrian became a fixture in his life, a casual, comfortable presence. They fell into a rhythm. Dinner twice a week, basketball games on the weekends, long conversations on Adrian's patio that stretched past midnight. It felt good to have someone who understood, who didn't judge, who didn't offer useless platitudes about time healing all wounds. But there were moments, small ones easily dismissed, when Adrian's hand would linger on Marcus's shoulder, when their knees would touch on the couch and Adrian wouldn't move away, when the air would thicken with something unspoken. Marcus pretended not to notice. Sarah's affair partner was named David Reeves. Marcus had done what everyone does. He'd stalked the man's social media, built a profile of his wife's lover, successful marketing executive, recently divorced himself, good-looking in that generic way women seem to like. In photos, he smiled with too many teeth. Why him? Marcus asked one night, drunk on Adrian's bourbon. What does he have that I don't? It's not about that, Adrian said. It's never about being enough. Some people are just broken inside. They need the validation of being wanted more than they need to keep their promises. She promised to love me, for better or worse. People say a lot of things they don't mean. Adrian moved closer on the couch. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus looked at him. What can I do? Sign papers and move on. That's one option. Adrian's voice dropped lower. Or you could make her feel what you're feeling. Make her understand what she's lost. How? Adrian's smile was slow, dangerous. There are ways. You could move on conspicuously. Let her see you with someone new. Let her imagine you happy without her. I'm not ready for that. No? Adrian's hand rested on the couch between them, inches from Marcus's leg. Or are you just afraid to take what you want? The moment stretched. Marcus felt the bourbon humming through his veins, felt the warmth of Adrian's presence, felt the yawning emptiness where his marriage used to be. It would be so easy to close that distance, to let someone want him again, to hurt Sarah the way she'd hurt him. He stood abruptly. I need to go. Marcus. Thanks for the drinks. He stumbled home, his head spinning. In his kitchen, he poured water with shaking hands. What was he doing? What was he even considering? His phone rang. Sarah. He answered before he could think better of it. Marcus, please, she sobbed. Please just talk to me. I made a mistake. Terrible, stupid mistake. But I love you. I've always loved you. You fucked him, Marcus said flatly. Multiple times. In hotels. While I was home thinking you were at yoga. I know. I'm so sorry. How long? Silence. Then, quietly, 3 months. 3 months. 90 days of lies. Of coming home to him with another man's touch still on her skin. Of smiling at him across the dinner table while planning her next betrayal. I want you to hurt, Marcus said. The way I'm hurting. I do hurt. I'm dying inside. No, you're not. But you will be. He hung up before she could respond. He drank more that night than he had in years. The world tilted and spun. Around 2 a.m., he found himself standing in his driveway in his pajamas, staring at Adrian's house. Light glowed in the upstairs window. His feet moved before his brain caught up. He knocked on Adrian's door, swaying slightly. Adrian answered in a t-shirt and sweatpants. Hair mussed. Marcus. You said you were here, Marcus slurred. You said if I wanted. If I needed. Understanding flickered in Adrian's eyes. Come inside. Marcus let himself be led to the couch. Adrian brought water, blankets, aspirin. The kindness of it made Marcus want to weep. I want to hurt her, Marcus said. I want her to feel this. I know. Tell me how. Adrian sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. You already know how. You just need permission. From who? Yourself. Adrian's hand found Marcus's. You deserve to feel wanted again. Desired. Chosen. Let me give you that. Marcus looked at their joined hands. It would be so simple. To lean in. To let this happen. To call Sarah tomorrow and tell her he'd moved on. That she wasn't the only one who could break their vows. The revenge would be perfect. Complete. But as he looked up at Adrian's face, at the hunger barely disguised there, Marcus felt something crack open inside him. Not desire. Not revenge. But clarity. I'm not this person, he whispered. Adrian's expression didn't change. What person? Someone who destroys himself to hurt someone else. Marcus pulled his hand away. I should go. You're drunk. Stay here. Sleep it off. Marcus shook his head, standing on unsteady legs. I need to go home. He made it to the door before Adrian spoke again. She doesn't deserve your nobility. Marcus looked back. This isn't about her. It's about me. Morning arrived with a sledgehammer headache and crushing shame. Marcus remembered everything. The drunken walk to Adrian's house, the offered hand, the moment he'd almost surrendered to the worst version of himself. He texted Adrian. I'm sorry about last night. I was drunk and not thinking clearly. The response came an hour later. Nothing to apologize for. We all have moments of weakness. But it wasn't weakness Marcus felt. It was something closer to grief. For the man he'd almost become. For the marriage he'd lost. For the future he'd imagined that would never exist. He called his attorney and pushed the divorce forward aggressively. Sarah fought it, but her position was weak. The photos Adrian had taken were damning. Her lawyer advised her to settle. Marcus avoided Adrian for the next few days, needing space to think. But on Friday evening, Adrian knocked on his door. You've been hiding, Adrian said. No accusation in his tone, just observation. Processing. Can I come in? Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in his living room, the same living room where he and Sarah had watched movies, argued about paint colors, made plans for children they'd never have. I owe you an apology, Adrian said. You don't. I do. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I haven't been honest with you about why I moved here, about those photos. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What do you mean? I didn't just happen to see Sarah at that hotel. I followed her. The world tilted. Why? Because I'm a photographer, Adrian said. A private investigator, actually. Your wife hired me 6 months ago to follow you. She thought you were having an affair. The words didn't make sense. Marcus tried to process them to find a shape that fit. Sarah hired you? To follow me? She was paranoid. Jealous. She'd found some texts from your coworker Jennifer and convinced herself you were cheating. Adrian's laugh was bitter. Ironic, right? Classic projection. But I wasn't. Jennifer and I are just friends. I know. My report cleared you completely. But by then, I'd started following Sarah too. Curious about why someone so suspicious was being so secret of herself. That's when I found David. Marcus stood, paced. His mind was reeling. So you've known for 6 months? You moved here because I couldn't stop thinking about it. About you. Adrian stood too, faced him. I watched you, Marcus. For weeks. I saw how you lived. How lonely you were even before you knew about the affair. How you'd come home to an empty house. Eat dinner alone. Fall asleep on the couch waiting for a wife who was fucking someone else. This is insane. I know. Adrian stepped closer. I know it's crossing every line. But I saw something in you. Something good and real that was being wasted. And I thought maybe if you knew the truth, if you were free, maybe what? You could swoop in and play hero. Marcus heard his voice rising. This was all calculated? The friendly neighbor act? The dinners? The bourbon and the convenient shoulder to cry on. It wasn't an act. My feelings are real. Your feelings. Marcus laughed harshly. You don't even know me. You know some version of me you watched through a camera lens. I know you're kind. You donated to that homeless man every Wednesday. I know you're loyal, You kept calling Sarah during her yoga classes. Worried she wasn't hydrating enough. I know you're lonely, because I saw you standing at your bedroom window at 3 a.m., wondering why your wife wouldn't touch you anymore. The intimacy of those details felt like a violation. You're a stalker. I'm someone who recognized a good man being destroyed by someone unworthy of him. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to manipulate my entire life because of some obsession. I gave you truth, Adrian said sharply. Something your wife never did. I showed you who she really was. No, you used me. You saw a broken marriage and thought you could engineer the outcome you wanted. Marcus moved to the door, opened it. Get out. Marcus. Get out of my house. Stay away from me. Adrian stood there for a long moment, something like pain flickering across his face. Then he nodded slowly and left. Marcus slammed the door, his hands shaking with rage and confusion and something else he couldn't name. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A file transfer. He downloaded it with trembling fingers. It was Adrian's original investigation report. Photos of Marcus at work, at the gym, at the grocery store. Pages of detailed observations about his routines, his habits, his life. All commissioned by Sarah. All documenting the faithful husband she'd convinced herself was betraying her. At the bottom, Adrian had written, "Final conclusion. Subject shows no signs of infidelity. Recommend client examine her own behavior and motivations for suspicion." Sarah had read this report, had known Marcus was innocent, and had started her affair with David 2 weeks later. Marcus sat down heavily, the phone falling from his hand. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She'd suspected him of the exact sin she was about to commit, had hired someone to prove her paranoid fears. And when that proof exonerated him, she'd betrayed him anyway. He thought about Adrian watching him, building a narrative in his head, falling for a version of Marcus that existed only in surveillance photos and assumptions. He thought about Sarah, letting another man into their marriage bed while Marcus worked late to afford the life she claimed to want. He thought about the man he'd almost become that drunken night, willing to use someone else's desire to weaponize his own pain. Everyone in this story was broken in different ways. Everyone had loved badly or unwisely or destructively. But Marcus was still standing. Bruised, shattered, but standing. And that had to mean something. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in October. Marcus sat in the courthouse, Sarah on the opposite side of the room with her lawyer. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When their eyes met, hers filled with tears. He looked away. Afterward, in the parking lot, she approached him. He considered walking away but found he didn't have the energy to run anymore. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know it doesn't mean anything, but I'm so sorry." "Why?" The question that had haunted him for months finally emerged. "Why did you do it?" She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. I was unhappy, and instead of telling you, I blamed you. I convinced myself you must be cheating because I couldn't accept that I was the problem. And then David. He made me feel young again, desired. It was selfish and stupid and—" "It's done," Marcus interrupted. "We're done. I know." She wiped her eyes. "For what it's worth, you deserved better. You deserved someone who could appreciate what they had." After she left, Marcus sat in his car and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just a vast emptiness where his anger used to be. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your mailbox when you get home." Marcus drove home slowly, exhausted. In his mailbox, he found a thick envelope. Inside was a letter in Adrian's precise handwriting. "Marcus, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've taken a job in Portland and will be leaving tomorrow. I wanted to give you space to process everything without the complication of my presence next door. I owe you a real apology, not for showing you the truth about Sarah, but for my methods and my motivations. You were right. I was a stalker and manipulator, someone who saw a crack in your life and tried to wedge myself into it. I told myself I was helping you, but really, I was trying to save myself. I saw in you something I'd lost in myself, the capacity for loyalty, for real love, for choosing integrity even when it costs you everything. I convinced myself that if I could be close to that, if you could see me the way I saw you, maybe I could become that person too. But you can't borrow someone else's goodness. You have to build your own. That night you came to my door, drunk and hurting, offering yourself up for revenge. I wanted to take it. God, I wanted to. But when I looked at you, I saw someone who still believed in being a good person despite everything that had happened. And I realized that taking advantage of your pain would make me no better than Sarah. You didn't need revenge, Marcus. You needed to remember who you are. Not Sarah's husband. Not a cuckolded fool. Not a man defined by betrayal. Just Marcus. Someone fundamentally decent trying to navigate an indecent situation. I hope you find that person again. I hope you build a life that honors who you are, not what was done to you. I hope you find love with someone who deserves it, though frankly, I'm not sure anyone does. Thank you for not becoming what I almost made you. Thank you for choosing dignity over destruction. I'm sorry for the pain I caused while trying to ease it. I'm sorry I couldn't just be your friend without wanting more. I'm sorry I tried to turn your tragedy into my love story. But I'm not sorry I showed you the truth. You deserved to know. And you deserved better than living a lie. Take care of yourself, Marcus. The world needs more people like you. Adrian. P.S. I'm enclosing all the files from my original investigation. What you do with them is your choice, but you should know the full story. Also, I've canceled my lease. The house is empty. Your secret is safe. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he walked next door. Adrian's house was indeed empty, hollowed out, as if he'd never been there at all. In the kitchen, Marcus found one last note taped to the counter. You were worth the obsession. I hope someday you believe that too. Marcus stood in that empty house for a long time, thinking about the strange man who'd upended his life twice. Once by revealing his wife's betrayal, once by revealing his own. He thought about revenge and desire and the thin line between saving someone and consuming them. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, blissfully ignorant, quietly unhappy, building a life on a foundation of sand. And the man he was now, divorced, disillusioned, but somehow more honest than he'd been in years. That night, Marcus took all the files, Adrian's investigation, the photos of Sarah, the surveillance logs, everything, and burned them in his fireplace. He watched the paper curl and blacken, watched his old life turn to ash. Then he opened his laptop and started writing. Not about Sarah or Adrian or betrayal, but about a man who thought he knew what his life was supposed to look like and learned, painfully, that sometimes destruction is just making room for something better. He wrote for hours, words pouring out like a wound draining. And for the first time in months, he felt something other than pain. Not happiness. Not yet. But possibility. His phone rang. A friend from college he hadn't spoken to in years, calling to say she was in town and wanted to catch up. Marcus surprised himself by saying yes. He met her for coffee the next day. They talked about old times, new times, the strange shape their lives had taken. She was recently single too, tired of dating apps, thinking about getting a dog. It's stupid, she laughed. But I feel like I need to remember how to be alone before I can be with someone again. That's not stupid, Marcus said. That's the smartest thing I've heard in months. They made plans to meet again. Just friends, nothing more. But it felt good to have something to look forward to. Walking home, Marcus passed the empty house next door. He thought about Adrian, wherever he was now, carrying his own broken pieces to some new city. He hoped the man found whatever he was looking for. He hoped it wasn't in someone else's life. For himself, Marcus was learning a hard truth. Sometimes the people who hurt you are trying to help. Sometimes the people who help you end up hurting you. And sometimes the only way forward is to accept both and move on anyway. He still thought about Sarah sometimes. About the life they'd almost had. But those thoughts no longer had teeth. They were just memories now, fading photographs of people who didn't exist anymore. Marcus unlocked his door and stepped inside. The house was quiet but not empty. He was here. That was enough. On his desk, the manuscript he'd started last night waited. 50 pages of raw honesty about marriage and betrayal and the unexpected ways people can save you while trying to destroy you. He sat down and kept writing. Outside, autumn was turning to winter. The days were getting shorter, the nights longer. But spring would come eventually. It always did. Marcus wrote until the words ran out. Then he closed his laptop, poured himself a modest bourbon, and toasted the empty room. To dignity, he said aloud, and to destruction. May I always choose the former. The house didn't answer. But in the silence, Marcus found something better than absolution or revenge or even understanding. He found himself. And that, after everything, was enough.